Hello and welcome to Inside the WSL. We have another packed out programme for you, and joining me as guests in studio this week, we've got football journalist Flo Lloyd-Hughes, also making her debut in the Inside WSL studio for Dumu Olo from Sky Sports News. Good to have you both with us. Here is what's coming up on the show.
Oh, good save! Football is a facilitator for change. We are footballers, but at the end of the day, we just want to be good people and hopefully encourage others to just be true to themselves.
February is a very busy month when it comes to international fixtures, but it's also the month that we celebrate LGBTQ+ History Month. Now, the WSL is one of the most diverse and inclusive leagues, but what we want to do is look away from just the players on the pitch, and it goes beyond that as well. You may remember back in October that Arsenal celebrated their lifelong supporter Lucy Clark, who became the first transgender official in English football. She's then gone on to set up the Truck League, a transgender football league in the UK, and I went along to watch one of her matches. Lucy, great to meet you, and you will be familiar to a lot of Arsenal fans who love WSL because you were paraded on the pitch. You had a celebration event. Tell us about that first of all and what it meant to you.
Oh, it's totally amazing. Yeah, to get asked to go up was just brilliant. So yeah, it was great going into the director's box. And just getting treated really nice. It was just a fabulous day. Got to meet all the players, managed to wangle my way through to where the tunnel was so I could get my photos with a few of them. Was presented with a shirt from Kim Little, which I'll treasure forever, which was just amazing. And we won, so even better. Yeah, no, it was just a fabulous day.
All of that was in recognition of you being the first transgender official. But since then, it's just steamrolled on and on. So tell me what you've been doing in the last 12 months.
We set up Truck United because a lot of people come to me saying that they wish that there was a football team for them, and I used to say there are, but there's a lot of hoops that they felt that they had to jump through, and when they jumped through they'd go to a team and they just didn't feel that they'd be accepted. And as much as I said to them, look, you will, lots of people was like, oh no, I can't do it, and everyone thought everyone should play football, so I set a team up. We set up Truck United, which is a fully inclusive team. We have various different matches. Last year we fielded the first team solely of transgender women, which is the world's first, and that was just totally amazing. And we were just showing that trans people can play sport. Yeah. We're looking to do the same this year with trans men on the same date, Transgender Day of Visibility. We're in a five-a-side league, which we're here tonight. So yeah, we're just football's for everyone, and I firmly believe that. And nobody should say that they can't play football.
No.
Because everyone should. We've probably got a squad of near 100 people.
Wow.
From all over the UK, and people come down from Edinburgh and they come up from Devon. You know, they literally travel from everywhere to come and play for us. So we try and put lots of different games on for people to make sure that everyone can get a game.
It is a real community, and community is what it's been about for you. You have said to me that you feel football saved you. I imagine a lot of the people that are joining the sides feel the same. Explain to me your relationship with football.
My relationship, well, yeah, saved my life, to be fair. When I was young, it was like the 80s, we didn't have the internet that we have today. So I knew how I felt inside, so I was transgender, which wasn't a thing then. So I just thought I was the only person in the world. So I loved football, always loved football. And because when you're playing football, you forget about everything else that's happening in the world and at that time what was happening in my brain. So for me, I dread to think where I'd be now if I didn't have football when I was young. From conversations, you know, lots of others have said that, and I think for us, we've offered that platform for people that thought that they'd never play football again, and now suddenly they're realising that they can play football, whatever their age. I mean, we've had players as young as 14 and players as old as 60. Today we've got 2 players in their 50s. You know, so yeah, football's for everyone, whatever the age as well.
What do you think about the last 12 months generally and the way that the world's caught up? It feels like this is a conversation that is being had more and more. Are you happy that the way that the football community is coming together now and starting to make strides in these areas of new leagues, everything that you've started, do you think this can escalate even further?
It can. It needs. The women's game is leading the way, I have to say. I don't, you know, no disrespect to the men's game, I'm involved with both. But the women's game is leading the way. The women's game is so inclusive, and the men's game really needs to catch up. And for trans people in particular, we get a lot of hard time, especially on the internet and stuff. So football's a great escape, and for trans people to be accepted in football is just absolutely brilliant.
And I'm sure a lot of our viewers who play in the women's leagues will recognise you because you're also an official. What is it about the officiating that you love so much?
I've always refereed, even from the age of 10 years old. I used to play Little League, so I'd play one game and then officiate in the other two. So it's just part of being involved in football. And I kind of took up refereeing properly about 17 years ago with the intention of looking at players, because I was going to go back into managing, but then I suddenly started progressing as a referee, and it was like, you know what, no, we'll stay with this path as a match official.
You've got everything covered.
That's it, yeah.
And as a huge Gooner, are you hoping one day that you might be able to referee Arsenal women?
I've refereed their academy.
Okay.
So that's good, and was amazing. But for that match, they were just red, you know, the team in red. So yeah, I've refereed them. If I could, I probably wouldn't be allowed to referee the women's team. To be fair now, because everyone knows I'm a gooner.
Well, I've just told everyone.
Well, yeah, exactly. But you know, they have friendlies and stuff like that.
Yes.
So they just need to ring me and get me down to Boreham Wood to do one of their pre-season friendlies.
There is the campaign. Thank you so much for inviting us along.
No, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Cheers.
One of the things that I can tell you is Lucy is a fierce competitor on the pitch as well. Flo, what was your reaction to seeing that and the awareness that it raises as well?
Yeah, it's amazing, and I've seen what the Truck League's been doing and the matches that they've been playing, which a lot of them have been fundraising games, but also just about raising awareness against friendlies against other teams as well. So amazing message to send, and also I think as someone who has trained to be a referee, I know that is not an easy job, and I stopped doing it in my teenage years. So to see Lucy still be doing that is not easy. So yeah, definitely good luck to them, because it's a hard gig. So I hope they continue to go up the ranks with their officiating as well.
She is a complete powerhouse though, so as well as officiating for Dumo, she's also there playing as well, and we heard about all of her teammates, the length and breadth of the country that they travel, but you can sense, can't you, that community factor is really important?
Yeah, absolutely. It gives a huge sense of community. You look at where they travel to, the likes of like going to Devon, to Cambridge, to Edinburgh. They really travel up and down the country for the sake of this, and it just shows you that there is a huge interest, but also that they are able to just go to different parts of the country and really build a community for themselves, which is really safe, and they get to enjoy the game they love.
I touched on it as well there, Flo, in that piece about the 12 months that we've had. Just to be able to see where, you know, transgender has come in terms of the accessibility now, not only in the officiating but for the leagues as well. Would you expect that this is going to go even further now?
Yeah, it's a massive conversation that football's having, because I think football is such an inclusive space, as we all know through our own experiences, whether that's playing the game or working in the game. And I think there are still some things that they need to do to ensure that for a lot of trans people in England. I think there are positive strides, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think what we see with Lucy's story is probably a message that's shared a lot of, around the country, which is a lot of the time it takes people to start things themselves. It takes that work to be done in communities, and someone to kind of stick their head up, like she said, who she didn't really want to necessarily do it because she thought there would be the safe space anyway, but to say, okay guys, I'm going to take on this project and I'll create the space for you. And I think lots of other places and environments in football need to take that as well, so the pressure is not always on the transgender community or other communities to create them space for themselves, and people are saying, no, come and join us and what we've created.
LGBTQ plus History Month is an excuse for us to shine a light on this, but what we want to do, especially here on Inside the WSL for Dumo, we don't want to just talk about it in February. We want to talk about it throughout the rest of the year as well, and the extra bits that we can be doing along the way, and that's so important that the community, the football community, keep talking about it.
Absolutely. We talk about the WSL being a very inclusive league in terms of the number of players who are out and the community of fans that come to the games who are out, but it is having those conversations pretty much month on month, day on day, because it's a huge part of their lives, and to single it out for 1 month just probably isn't right, and it should be done and celebrated more regularly. And someone like Lucy is doing absolutely incredible work, and it's needed in this community.
Now, it's been quite the start to 2023 for Gabby George, who picked up the Barclays Player of the Month award for January. Kelly Smith went along to catch up with the Everton defender.
Congratulations, Gabby, on winning the Barclays Women's Super League Player of the Month. Did you see it coming?
Thank you, first and foremost. No, not at all. I was really surprised, to be honest.
So you're the first defender this season to win Player of the Month. Do you find it harder for defenders to get recognition, unless you score a worldie?
Yeah, I do think it is harder as a defender, because
you never really get the limelights of the goals and assists, but I think I was buzzing to get the clean sheet, but I got a goal and assist what went along with it this month, it's delightful, but it just shows how far we're coming on as a team.
I want you to go and show me how you produced that assist. You ready?
Let's try.
All right, Gabby, ready? Let's go. We've got Aggie acting as Katia. What I like about this goal is Jess Park did amazing to turn and face and play the ball in, and your movement was fantastic. So you cut and then you put your hand where you wanted the ball. So when you're coming down the line and you're looking for the cross, is it about power to get it there as quickly as possible, or is it more about accuracy?
I think it's a bit of both. I think you want to get enough power so it beats the first man, and when you're trying to get it in a precise gap, I think you need to be able to do it quickly.
Fizz it in.
Yeah, and I think for the strikers, they want to be able to do it off one touch, so if it's got the power on, they've just got to touch it and it's in like that.
Because it was such a good ball in, Aggie, Katia, just had to open her up and just guide it in.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's coming in slower, she's going to have to readjust herself, the defender will come, so it's all about the correct pace of the ball.
Yeah, and just making sure that it's in front of them so they don't have to slow down and they can just continue the run.
Yeah. Gabby George in the making.
You can watch that masterclass in full along with an interview with Gabby on our Sky Sports Football YouTube channel. And I guess we've got to start. Flo, I'm going to talk about England to begin with. It is the elephant in the room. She didn't have a call-up for the Arnold Clark Cup, but her stats have been so good. Do you think that that's been a glaring omission from Sarina?
I think it's tough because she has been someone who's been in and around Sarina Wiegman's camp over the last couple of months, and she hasn't yet got, I think, a run out under her once she's been called up. So Sarina Wiegman's had a look at her in that environment, had her play with other players. But I think for so many players right now, it is just so competitive to get into that squad. So Gabby George is not alone in knocking on the door and just missing out. I think there's lots of players who are on the cusp, and Sarina Wiegman's certainly trying to take a look at new players when it comes to that defensive area. So I think she will probably get a shout maybe in the next window, in that April international window, but is just missing out right now.
And you don't think it's too late then for the World Cup?
Oh, absolutely not, no. And I think Sarina Wiegman's shown in her coaching style and who she's been calling up over the last couple of windows is that the door is open for so many young players like Laura Coombs coming out from the cold for the first time in years. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I think that's great for English players in the league because it'll just make their performances go up and up.
And for Dumo, I guess the wider conversation here is about Everton and how well they've been doing in terms of clean sheets. They've kept 6 this season, got a good defensive record, and Gabby's been central to that.
Absolutely. Obviously, they've got the 4th best defensive record in the league, and they've been really integral. They're kind of, I guess, the silent threat in the league. You look at the top 4 and you look at the bottom of the table, and that's where most of the attention is. But they've been very comfortable in the middle with the change of management. They've really found their feet, and Gabby's been really central to that. It's not often that you see a defender score, but being able to contribute in goals as well as defend and not letting in those goals, and she's really threatening in that defence, and it's hugely important as to why Everton will go from strength to strength. So I do think like she has got the potential to get that England call up, but more importantly just to grow in this league.
Do you think that's what she's added to her game, these assists and goals that she's been popping up with, Flo?
Yeah, and she's had a difficult couple of years with injury as well. She spent a lot of time out, and she's been quite unlucky over the last couple of years, especially being in an environment at Everton where they've had a lot of coaching changes. So it's been tough for that entire squad. But I think what she's shown, like Fadumo said, for a lot of those players, is actually once you have a bit of stability come into that camp, it's going to help a lot of these players shine. And she's been there for a very long time now, has still got a lot of potential in her career, and she's got exciting young players, some of which are on loan, but other exciting young players and experienced players around her, which is only going to help them go from strength to strength. And I still think Everton fans might be a little bit disappointed with how the season's gone because they have struggled in some games, struggled to score goals at points. But I think, like Fadumo said, the foundations are there for them to potentially kick on next season. And I think, they'll definitely be safe, but I think they'll want a lot more.
I suppose the flip side for these impressive numbers for Gabby, Fadumo, when you think about the assists and goals that she's getting, is that only Jess Parker's actually got more. Is there a problem up front for Everton? Is that part of what they need to address for the second part of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, I think the strength is obviously they've got their foundation, as Flo mentioned, but when you have a player that's going to have to contribute into various roles, it really takes away from her strength, which is defending. So I do think Everton need to either strengthen up, whether that happens in the summer window, or just really find some other options in that midfield to kind of go up front. But for Gabby herself, I do think getting on that score sheet just helps with, in terms of exposure, getting that player of the month, and even like, you know, making sure she's constantly in that vision of Serena and in the vision of that manager to get that game time consistently, because she's come back from an ACL injury, but she's been playing every single game this season.
And Barclays Player of the Month awards, it's not very often, Flo, that we see them go to defenders. Do you feel that defenders are getting more recognition? Is this the start of it with Gabby George?
I think it's really important, and I think we've seen a lot of goalkeepers get nominations this season. Mary Earps won it, but I think all in all, that really passed me by. But I think all in all, defenders and goalkeepers maybe don't get enough credit. It's always the star strikers or the wingers that we see win these awards. So I think it is really positive that Gabby George has won it, because I think it just shows that, you know, you need to share the love a little bit sometimes.
You have spoken about that mid-table obscurity, we're going to call it, in WSL. Where do you think Everton will finish for Dumo?
Oh, that is a tough one. That is a very tough one. Oh, I'm just trying to think, where will they finish? I do think they've got the potential to move up a little bit more than where they are. I think having that strong foundation in terms of defensively being really good, not letting in as many goals, like obviously it's important to score, but equally not to let them in, especially in the WSL where there is that massive disparity in games. So I do think they have the potential to finish a little bit higher, but then you do have other teams like Aston Villa who strengthened massively over the winter break, and they are really growing into their potential. So it's going to be tough to really call it, but I think maybe 1 or 2 spots above from where they are right now.
You've got a few nods there from Flo, so maybe she's in agreement.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's so tight for the bottom 5 or so, but I think of all those teams, Everton have probably the best squad, and I think are moving in the most positive direction, and I think can be the most consistent. So I do think, I agree, I think they are going to push up and move further away from that bottom pack when you've got teams like Spurs in a real tough form at the moment.
In the first half of the show, we talked about inclusivity in WSL, but that expands further around all of the leagues in the UK, including the SWPL.
So we're basically playing for 3 of the biggest teams in Scotland, Rangers, Celtic, Glasgow City. Like, I personally do feel that the women's game is quite an inclusive game. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you know, we all love being around each other, and I think it's a comfortable environment where we can really flourish, and I love that about women's football.
I agree. I think women's football is a massive facilitator for safety in this community, in this environment, for players, for spectators.
As especially the younger players come through, it's about creating that safe space and being there maybe if their own families aren't there at the time, and just being there and being someone that they can look up to no matter my own sexuality. It's just making sure that they understand that I'm there for them. How has your experience been with the national team for you?
Yeah, so it's been a little while ago since I made my debut for the national team. I was 18, 19 years old, so around 11 years ago. But I do remember that the first question on day 1 I got asked at the dinner table was whether I liked boys or girls. So it was quite intimidating question. Like it didn't come from a hostile place. They just wanted to know that it was okay, whatever it was. But I guess it shows that it's not really a taboo topic.
Yeah.
The Netherlands hosted the Euros in 2017, and that was a massive breakthrough for women's football in the country. But if we talk about LGBT plus stuff, there were back then, and there are a couple of girls on the team who are openly out, and I think that helped a lot for the younger generations watching, and the Dutch team won, so that created this massive momentum, and I think people just got used to seeing all different sorts of women, all different looks, different sexualities, and I think that did a lot of good for women's football or football in general, but even for society back home. So I really hope that for you guys hosting the World Cup this year, you will have the same sort of positive influence.
We know it's important, and we know football is a facilitator for change, but at the end of the day, we are footballers, but at the end of the day, we just want to be good people, and hopefully encourage others to just be true to themselves, and long may that continue.
I think there's still instances where homophobia is on social media or from the stands, and I think, how have you felt if you've dealt with that? How has it been?
I haven't experienced a great deal, but you always do get, you know, the odd kind of DM or comment. And for me, being out for nearly 10 years now, I'm at a place where I can deal with it, and it's just sort of a simple delete, kind of move on.
Block report and move on with your life. Yeah.
But there was like a time where it was extremely like scary, and I think that's kind of why I do what I do, and why now that I'm so comfortable, because I know that there are individuals out there who aren't at a place that I'm at and who are still struggling with kind of coming to terms with whatever or wherever they fall, and if they do fall on the spectrum or what have you. I always say to myself, if I can have an impact on at least one individual, then I'm doing something right.
Hopefully everyone has their own support network in terms of family and friends, but if you don't, then hopefully football can be a bit of a safe space for you to be yourself.
That was a fascinating, insightful chat that we got to. I felt like we were overhearing and joining in there. I think women's football, it's safe to say that it leads the way in terms of inclusivity for Dumo. Do you think that there's something that the wider world of football could learn?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We just spoke earlier on about Lucy and talking about the transgender community, the LGBTQ plus community. There's lots of community that feel that women's football is a safe space for them. Equally, there's lots of things that need to be done in women's football, but we got to give credit where credit's due, which is in the sense that there is a massive community which do feel included in football, and it's not just exclusive to the WSL as we've seen.
No, and it's the safe spaces as well. I think that's been a real theme of this show. You can tell everyone is comfortable talking about it, Flo, and it does feel like it's setting the precedent.
I think that's also what draws a lot of people to women's football, because I think they feel like maybe in other spaces, not just football spaces, but there's plenty of spaces in society where maybe they don't feel that comfort and that security. So I think that's great that women's football's managed to cultivate that, and a lot of clubs as well as the players are really passionate about promoting that, especially with their LGBTQ fan groups or even just individual players who are really engaged. Think about people like Magdalena Eriksson and Pernilla Harder, who write about it in columns and are doing a lot of campaigning around it. I think it's really important because they're more than just role models, because they are showing to fans that this is a space for them.
And talking about a certain section of fans in particular, it's the youth, the young generation coming through. We look around WSL grounds and see so many now going in attendance. It's a great message to send out for those future generations.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes us feel old, doesn't it?
Not too old.
Not too old, a little bit. But it is lovely to go to those games and see that there are a lot of young fans. I don't know if you guys saw a video of Georgia Stanway and this little kid saying he loves the Lionesses because of her. So you see, it's not just, here, it's pretty much all over Europe and all over the world. So there is a huge community that are getting behind women's football, and it's travelling down to young kids who just really want to be there and enjoy football and get those experiences that they probably would have got in a lot later stage when they watch men's football.
And you spoke, Flo, about Magdalena and Pernilla. Would you like to see more? We know that it's such an inclusive sport. Would you like to see more features?
I think so. I mean, obviously, some people will always keep their private life private, and that's totally up to them. But I think in women's football, I think so many players have realised that they really do have a space and maybe a role to play, and they also do have a platform that maybe they didn't quite realise that even if they're not as big a name as some of the huge high-profile men's players, they still have a really powerful platform that they can tap into. And I think some players are starting to realise in that and saying, actually, now is a really important time to use my voice and say what I want to say and have a really positive influence. And
it's a reminder as well of the dressing rooms and how much it can have, when you feel comfortable, it can have an effect on the pitch in terms of winning as well.
Absolutely, and I think it just shows when we spoke about community that it's not just, we're not talking just about race, and we're not talking just about gender and sexuality, even the elements of being a mother, like the WSL now has lots of mothers in the league who do come back to football, they bring their kids to the game, and it just really shows that football is a career which you can have lots of other things in your life going alongside it. So there is huge potential and huge growth within the women's game.
For Dumo and Flo, thank you very much for joining me in the studio, and we'll see you again next time.
Sky Sports Football. Feel it all.